Thank you for taking the time to do an interview here with us. We've got Rebecca Moesta.
Moesta. Ignore the O. Pretend there's no O there.
So Rebecca Moesta. When writing the Young Jedi Knights series with Kevin, how did you two go about splitting up the writing duties?
Well, the first thing we would do is we would brainstorm what the story was going to be. And we would then do what we called a splat and get it all down and dump it into the computer. And then we would kind of massage it into order and plump it out and fluff it out. And then we would send it in to Lucasfilm for the approval. And if they approved it, then we would split everything up into chapters, the whole story we had outlined. And then he would pick the chapters he wanted, and I would pick the ones I wanted. I tended to gravitate towards Jaina because I wanted to make her, have a mechanical mind and be a ringleader and kind of break any female stereotypes that it was 20 years ago. It was not even as common as it was today. So I wanted her to be an inspiration to teens. And Kevin loved the goofiness of Jason, so he liked to make him tell dumb jokes, and he loved animals. Kevin adores animals. Animals adore Kevin. So there was kind of an affinity in those two. And then we would just pick which storylines we liked to focus on, or favorite characters, and we would just split it up 50-50, and we would go off and write our chapters. Kevin's faster than I am, so he was usually done with his chapters before I was done with mine. And then once all of the chapters were finished, we would one of us would go through all of the chapters and do a smooth out edit, and then we'd hand it to the other person and do a complete edit, and then kind of swap it until it was smoothed out so that it wasn't just like either of us, but kind of a better version of it.
Later on, you wrote the Junior Jedi Knights series with Nancy Richardson. How did that project come about?
I didn't exactly write it with her. What started was that Kevin and I wrote the story arc together. And then Lucy had a friend who wanted first crack, and so she allowed her to write the first 3 novels in that, and I wrote the second 3 novels. So Kevin and I did the story arc and created the characters, and then Nancy did the first 3 and I did the next 3.
How did you approach that series differently than just the Young Jedi Knights?
Well, they were definitely targeted to younger readers. So when Kevin and I write for teens, we don't dumb down the language, we don't make the syntax any less complicated or anything. We do it like we would write for a grown-up novel. But the protagonists are the kids, and they get the fun action. So pretty much it was the same type of thing, but it was a little bit simpler. But I tend to have more complicated sentence structure, even though I would break them up once I got to the editing point. If I found something that was complicated and I went, yeah, this would definitely be a little too challenging for like a 4th grader. Maybe that's not good enough. So I still wanted to focus it on the kids being the important people and having all of the fun adventures just like I wanted when I was reading when I was a kid.
You also wrote a short story for the Tales of the Mos Eisley Cantina called Trade Winds, the Ranat's Tale.
Yep.
Did you get to choose what character you would write a story for in that collection?
I'm trying to remember if I got to choose or not. I wanted to write a story for it, and that was the first thing I actually wrote in the Star Wars universe, and Kevin had assigned a lot of stories in that, and so I wanted to do a story, and he said, I think what he did was say, okay, this isn't a huge thing, but it interacts with these 2 characters, and you can do this character. And so I had to coordinate with him and with Doug Beeson, whose stories intersected with the Ranats.
Beyond Star Wars, you wrote a Star Trek novel with Kevin called Highest Score.
Yes.
Why did you choose to use a pseudonym with that one?
Well, part of the reason was we had a couple friends with us, and we wanted to write with them. And so it was actually the group of us that wrote it, although Kevin and I did most of the editing afterwards. So we did that under the name Kim Antilles. And I think all three of the other writers who did a couple of chapters in that were also winners at some point of the Writers of the Future contest.
I noticed you have a series called Crystal Doors.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
I love Crystal Doors. And I think in the feeling of it, it's the most like Young Jedi Knights. It's about a couple of teen cousins from the United States, however, so it's set in the modern day. And they end up getting pushed into an alternate world where they learn, so that in that sense it's kind of like going to the Jedi Academy, but they basically learn science and magic together, and they discover that they're the fulfillment of a prophecy that they're going to save the universe from evil, which is always cool when you're a teenager and you find out that you have to save the universe.
Are there any other projects you have in the works? Anything fans can look forward to next from you?
I'm actually working on a nonfiction writing book right now it's called Strata, The Many Layers of Writing. And I do have some other fiction books I want to write, but right now I'm focusing so much on publishing that I haven't had as much time as I'd like for writing, and I'm doing a lot of editing as well. So I do need to get back to the fiction.
What's the nonfiction book about?
I talk about different things like how dialogue contributes to a good book, and how pacing contributes, and plotting, and characters, and character arcs and growth, and just all these different layers that sometimes people don't see. I have this pet peeve that people criticize authors because they only know one or two things about writing, and like I would hear people say, oh, J.K. Rowling doesn't deserve to have best-selling novels because she's a terrible writer. She uses adverbs all the time, and I'm going, seriously, that's all you know about writing? Because there are about 50 things she's doing right that you're not noticing. So I wanted to write a book about all of the things that are skillful on a writer's part that the reader may not notice because they criticize only what they see on the surface a lot of times.
And you say you're working on that one still?
Yes.
Any idea when that might come out?
Probably next year. Yeah.
Going back to Star Wars, what are some of your favorite Star Wars characters from your stories?
I'd have to say Tanel Ka was one of my very favorite because she was complicated. She was not like me. She was kind of like kick-ass, and I'm not very kick-ass. But also, she had these stresses on her trying to decide what parts of her background to be true to, and if she could be one thing and the other thing at the same time, and a lot of internal angst about that, and then also kind of a love story going on. Good stuff.
Do you have a favorite Star Wars book?
Lightsabers was my favorite.
And what do you think of the new direction of the current films with such strong female leads?
I like the strong female leads. I don't know anything about the upcoming ones, but I really enjoyed the first new one, and I get to watch it as a fan. So I think they couldn't really put it in the same timeline as everything else and try to incorporate all the books, obviously, so they have to do something new. But that also means that I don't know anything when I walk into it, and I get to be surprised and go ooh and ah, just like the other fans. So that's kind of cool.
All right, well, thank you.